Holofernes. Just hearing that name sent a chill down your spine. He was not a king, he was not a god, but he walked as if he were both. No one knows exactly where he was born, nor the village that saw him as a child, but they say that from an early age he had a restless gleam in his eyes. He was the kind of boy who did not accept defeat, and when he grew up, he became the man no one dared to contradict. He was hand-picked by Nebuchadnezzar, the powerful king of Babylon, to lead his army. But it wasn't just for his strength or strategy, it was for his thirst for conquest. There was something in his eyes that mixed hatred and pleasure when he saw a city fall. And Nebuchadnezzar knew it. He knew that to strike fear into those who resisted, he needed a man like that. An instrument of war, a clenched fist. Subscribe to the channel for more exciting Bible stories and turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos. If this content touches your heart and you want to support us, feel free to click on the Thanks a Lot button. All help is welcome and makes a big difference. On the battlefield, Holofernes did not speak much. He gave orders. And when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 1,000 swords. The soldiers obeyed him almost without thinking, not out of loyalty, but out of fear. And fear was his greatest asset. His name began to spread, first among the merchants, then in stories whispered at the doors of houses. "Here comes Holofernes," they said, and parents hid their children, the elderly prayed, and the strong fled. He was not just a general, he was a sign that destruction was near. But no man, no matter how cruel, could have imagined that a small people nestled in the mountains of Judea would dare to resist. Much less that there, among the cramped houses and tight-knit hearts, lay a force he did not know how to face. Because the next step in his mission was not just to invade another city, it was to face a kind of battle that even his sword could not resolve. Nebuchadnezzar was not the kind of king who took no for an answer. When he decided he wanted to rule the known world, he sent a simple message: either bow down or disappear. And the man he put at the forefront of this mission was Holofernes, his most feared, most loyal, and most ruthless general. The order was blunt and to the point: go west. Conquer all the nations that refuse to obey me and bring Judea to its knees. Simple as that. Holofernes didn't question it, he didn't hesitate. For him, it was another chance to prove that he could crush any resistance as easily as cracking an egg. When he left, he didn't just take soldiers with him, he took an avalanche. There were thousands upon thousands of men, armed to the teeth, marching with heavy steps that made the earth shake. Every city they crossed, every territory they traversed, was left in ruins. And all this in the name of Nebuchadnezzar. But to be honest, it wasn't just obedience. There was something else behind that thirst for war. It was as if Holofernes took pleasure in seeing fear in people's eyes. Over time, the general's fame became a constant whisper among caravans and camps. He spared no one, not women, not children, not temples, not cultures. Wherever he went, he left silence and ashes. And the further he advanced, the more invincible he felt. But in the midst of this path of destruction, there was one stone he had not yet kicked: Bethulia, a small town, almost forgotten on the map, but strategically located for anyone who wanted to reach Jerusalem. Holofernes knew he couldn't just ignore it, and so he decided that he would break it with patience. Because sometimes, to break someone, you don't have to shout. You just have to squeeze until their soul loses its breath. Holofernes' army was like a dark cloud that swallowed everything in its path. They marched day and night, as if the ground itself trembled with fear. Their boots pounded loudly, their shields glinted in the sun, and the sound of their marching became a nightmare in the neighboring towns. They didn't ask for passage. They took it. And when they took it, they left nothing but smoke and cries lost in the wind. He didn't just want to win, he wanted to humiliate. Holofernes took pleasure in seeing kings kneeling, leaders dragged through the streets, flags burned on the ground. It was as if he collected the defeats of others. He destroyed crops, poisoned wells, and threw salt on the fields. It wasn't enough to win. He wanted to make sure no one would rise again. And with every city destroyed, he became more arrogant. He thought the world was too small to resist his power. When he heard about the faith of the Jews, their trust in an invisible God, he laughed with contempt. "What good is faith against swords?" he would say as he sharpened his own. But Judea was still standing. Bethulia, perched high on a hill, was like a gate between him and Jerusalem. Small, yes, fragile perhaps, but stubborn as a rock. Holofernes did not want to attack all at once. He preferred to surround it. He cut off the water. He prevented food from entering. He created a suffocating siege, like a snake slowly coiling around the neck of its prey. Inside, the people tried to resist, but thirst was pressing, food was running out, and fear was growing. The elders were already thinking of surrendering. Mothers wept silently. The leaders tried to hide their despair. The days in Bethulia were getting heavy. The dry heat cut through the skin, but the worst was the lack of water. The jugs were empty, the eyes sunken, and hope slipped through their fingers like sand. Outside, Holofernes' army remained firm, camped like a patient animal, waiting for the city to surrender on its own. He was in no hurry. He knew that despair was a more cruel enemy than any spear. Inside, the city leaders were already beginning to give in. They spoke of surrender, of avoiding further suffering, of getting out alive. The men were divided. Some wanted to fight to the end, others just wanted to survive. But in the midst of that confusion, among the people who were almost out of strength, a different voice rose. Low, firm, unexpected. It was Judith, a widow, discreet, considered by many to be just another woman of prayer. But at that moment she seemed like a different person. She did not shout or demand anything. She simply stood before the leaders with a calmness that silenced everything around her. She said that it was not time to surrender, that there was still a way out, but she did not explain how. She just asked them to be patient and have faith. No one understood her. Some doubted her, others just looked on with curiosity. But Judith did not argue. She returned home, prepared herself in silence, washed her face, exchanged her mourning clothes for a beautiful dress, took some food, and left the city gate as if she were going to visit someone. Outside, it was a different world. The sound of horses, the laughter of soldiers, the smell of roasted meat mixed with dust and sweat. Judith walked among them as if she were not afraid. She asked to speak to the general, and no one dared to refuse. After all, who would have imagined that this woman with a soft voice and serene face could pose any threat? Holofernes, curious, ordered that she be let in. And that's when the game began to turn. When Judith entered Holofernes' tent, everything around her seemed to slow down. The soldiers fell silent. It was as if the air had changed. She did not arrive as one who begs. She arrived with lightness, with poise. She looked into their eyes, but without arrogance. She spoke with respect, but without submission. Holofernes, accustomed to seeing fear in everyone who approached him, was intrigued. This woman did not tremble. She did not bow. And even stranger, she said she was there to help him. She told him that the people of Bethulia had lost faith, that they were about to surrender, and that she, knowing the customs and flaws of that people, could deliver the city into his hands, without war, without resistance. He listened carefully, watching her every move like a hunter watches his prey. Only this time, he was the one being ensnared. Judith spoke as if telling a secret. Every word was placed in the right place. She used the exact tone between truth and mystery. And with each passing night, she asked to stay a little longer in the camp, saying that she would soon give the signal for the attack. Holofernes, blinded by vanity, saw no risk. He thought she was falling at his feet, when in fact it was he who was surrendering himself. The days passed, and the general's confidence grew. He began to admire Judith, then desire her, then trust her completely. She, on the other hand, waited for the right moment. She did not rush. She knew that true victory would not come with haste, but with precision. And then, on a sultry night, amid the celebrations, Holofernes ordered a banquet just for himself and Judith. He drank more than he should have. He laughed too loudly, and he fell heavily like a drunken lion. The tent darkened, silence slowly spread, and Judith already knew what she had to do. Holofernes' tent was crowded. The smell of wine mixed with strong perfumes created an almost suffocating air. Lit candles cast shadows on the fabric walls, and the sound of the general's laughter gradually faded, drowned out by drunkenness. He was there, slumped in his chair, his face heavy, his eyes half open, his head falling to one side. He thought he was about to enjoy another conquest. Little did he know that he had already been defeated, without a single sword being raised against him. Judith watched everything in silence, every detail. The way he held his cup, the way he slurred his words, the way he could no longer stand up. She knew that this was the moment. There would be no other chance. She couldn't hesitate. She approached calmly, as if to take care of someone who had fallen asleep. No one saw her enter. No one would dare to suspect her. After all, she was just a woman, wasn't she? And that was precisely what made her dangerous, invisible, underestimated. With steady hands, but a racing heart, Judith took Holofernes' sword. His sword, heavy, too big for her hands, but just right for what needed to be done. She took a deep breath. Time seemed to stand still, and with one swift, precise stroke, she cut off the general's head. No scream, no struggle, just the dry sound of blade meeting flesh and bone. The image was too powerful to believe. There before her was the man who had terrorized entire cities, now reduced to eternal silence. Judith then wrapped the head in a cloth, as if protecting a valuable object. She left the tent with light steps, hidden by the night, by fear and by faith. But one detail was still missing. One last act before the city knew of the victory that had been born from the hands of a silent woman. Night still covered the camp when Judith passed by the sleeping soldiers, Holofernes' head hidden in a cloth. Her steps were steady, but her heart beat like a drum trapped in her chest. With every shadow, a doubt. With every rustle of a tent, a risk. But no one stopped her, no one suspected anything. After all, she left the camp as she had entered, alone, serene, invisible to the eyes of men accustomed to seeing only what shines. Arriving at the gate of Bethulia, she knocked softly. The guards were slow to believe what they saw. It was Judith, alive, unharmed, with a different look, heavier, more determined. She asked them to call the leaders. When she opened the cloth and showed them what she was carrying, no one could contain their shock. There was the head of the enemy general. His eyes were empty, his mouth half open, his face still frozen in an expression of power that was now useless. The entire city was overcome by a strange silence, not out of fear, but out of amazement. Then there was muffled crying, followed by cries of relief, and finally, a battle cry. Judith, her clothes still stained, told exactly how it had happened. She did not exaggerate or hide anything. She just spoke, and when the men understood what she had done, fear gave way to courage. The leaders quickly organized themselves. The people regained their faith, and before the sun rose, Bethulia was already preparing for action. Meanwhile, in the Assyrian camp, the day dawned slowly. The soldiers woke up unhurried, unaware that anything had changed. They were still drunk with confidence, thinking that victory was assured. Little did they know that the heart of their army, their leader, had already stopped beating. The Assyrian camp woke up slowly. The first rays of sunlight hit the spears stuck in the ground, while the soldiers still yawned, certain that this would be just another day waiting for Bethulia to surrender. No one suspected anything. No one noticed the emptiness in the main tent. The general's absence went unnoticed amid the sounds of coffee being boiled and warm, routine conversations. But then, suddenly a cry. A soldier ran into the camp, his face white as chalk. He had gone to call Holofernes, and instead of the powerful general, found only blood. Lots of blood, and no body. Just the stained bed, and terror spread across the walls of the tent. The news spread like wildfire. Holofernes is dead. No one knew how. No one understood what had happened. All they knew was that the heart of the army had stopped beating. And where there had once been order, now there was chaos. Screams, running, soldiers dropping their armor, dismantling tents, trying to flee without even knowing where to go. And it was in this scene of confusion that the men of Bethulia appeared. They came down from the mountains with renewed courage, shouting like those who know they have already won. They did not have to fight hard. The Assyrian army, without a leader, without command, collapsed. They fled like frightened children, abandoning weapons, provisions, and even gold along the way. Judith watched everything in silence from afar. She didn't need to raise her voice or lift her sword. Her victory had come from faith and strategy. The city, once suffocated by the siege, now breathed deeply as if reborn. But instead of celebration or vanity, Judith chose something else. While the people celebrated in the streets, she withdrew. She returned home as one returns from mourning, but with the steady eyes of someone who still had more to offer. Bethulia dawned different. The sky seemed bluer, the wind lighter, and even the city bells rang with a different rhythm. The threat that surrounded the walls had vanished like smoke. People left their homes still suspicious, like someone who wakes up from a nightmare and needs to touch the floor to know if it's real. Soon came the hugs, the tears of joy, the laughter. Men who were already saying goodbye to life now joined in songs. Women who no longer had the strength to pray now danced in the streets. Children ran freely, as if they had never known fear. And in the center of it all was her, Judith. But Judith did not seek applause. She did not raise her head or climb onto platforms. She walked among the people with her eyes downcast, receiving their thanks with a shy smile. When they called her a heroine, she replied only that it was God who had fought for them, that she had only done what needed to be done. The city then gathered in a great act of praise. Not a cold ceremony, but a gathering of grateful hearts. They sang, they played drums, they raised their hands to the sky. It was the kind of celebration that does not come from conquest, but from deliverance. And in the midst of the celebration, Judith sang a song. Her voice, strong and serene, echoed through the stone houses. The words spoke of God's justice, of the arrogance of the powerful, of the faithfulness of the little ones. It was more than a song. It was a testimony. And those who heard it knew. Those words did not come from books, they came from experience. After that, when everyone expected her to take on some position, to lead the people, to be crowned in some way, Judith did the opposite. She withdrew. She chose silence. But her name had already escaped the walls and begun to travel paths she could not even imagine. The name Holofernes, which had once caused fear, became a symbol of defeat. Not just any defeat, one that can be explained by war tactics or strategic failures. It was a sudden, shameful, unexpected fall, one that left no room for excuses. The man who marched like a giant, who commanded thousands with a gesture, had his end traced by hands that no one took seriously. His face, once feared, was now remembered as that of a man deceived by his own pride. And his story began to circulate no longer in war cries, but in whispers of warning. In every city, in every corner where someone told of the victory of Bethulia, the name of Holofernes appeared as an example of what happens when arrogance blinds the eyes and deafens the heart. Meanwhile, Judith's name grew, not as that of an ordinary warrior, but as that of a woman who heard the voice of God in the midst of chaos and was not afraid to obey. Her feet crossed walls, deserts, and time itself. She returned to her simple life, seeking no reward, demanding no place of honor. But her presence remained etched in the memory of the people as a scar of hope. And the most curious thing is that, even out of sight, her name continued to spread. In markets, in meetings, in prayers, she became an example. And so, with the fall of a powerful man and the steadfastness of a woman no one expected, the people of God had their peace restored. The story of Holofernes ends in silence, not the silence of peace, but the silence that comes after error, after downfall, after everything that could have been avoided. He was not defeated by a larger army, nor by a greater force. He was defeated by himself, by overconfidence, by the vanity that grew so much that it prevented him from seeing the danger right before his eyes. He believed that nothing could touch him. That strength was enough. That power answered everything. And that illusion blinded him. He ignored warnings, underestimated the weak, mocked faith. He laughed at the name of God. And that is precisely why he fell. The lesson Holofernes leaves us is not about war. It is about limits, about how pride can disguise itself as courage, about how power, when it lacks wisdom, becomes a trap. He thought he ruled everything, but he did not rule himself. Meanwhile, Judith shows us the opposite. She did not need to raise her voice. She didn't need to prove anything. She was aware of her place, her faith, and what she was capable of. She waited for the right moment. She acted with humility, but also with firmness, and she won. Their story is like a mirror. On one side, what happens when arrogance rules. On the other, what can be born when faith acts with courage. They are opposite paths, but they intersect at the same point, the moment when justice appears. And in the end, the question that spans the centuries remains: who are we in this story? Who are we becoming? What are we feeding inside ourselves, the thirst for control or the courage to trust? Because what brought Holofernes down was not Judith. It was what he carried inside, and he didn't even realize it. If you like the story of Holofernes and want to continue following other stories of faith and overcoming adversity, be sure to like this video and share it with your loved ones. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content. Together, we will explore more powerful lessons from the Bible.